Welcome, welcome. We are back at it again. She with Sue, where every woman's story is valid. Karibuni sana. And in our today's episode, we'll be still doing transformation from addiction. And as I said last time, this month we'll be dealing with transformation from addiction because it's something that is in our families, in our society, and we need to give hope. We know it's doable. You can overcome. And in our today show, we have a guest. And our guest today, she's called Anne. She'll be telling us in a few who is Anne, where she's come from, and the journey she's had to go through, and how she overcame. And I believe it shall be a story that shall be encouraging to people and to our viewer. Karibu sana. Yes, Anne.
Hello.
Welcome at She with Sue.
Thank you so much.
Yes. So today we'll be talking about Anne. And the only person who knows Anne is Anne. So Anne will be giving us her story, and we want to hear her story. So who's Anne?
Thank you so much for having me here. My name is Anne Moirore. I'm 35 years old. I'm a mother of two girls. One turned 12 this November, last month, and the other will be turning 14 in March next year. So basically that's me, and I'm born again.
Yeah. Nice.
Uh-huh.
Nice. Okay, good to hear. Wow, so you're a mother of teenagers.
Yeah.
Wow. It's a bit scary, but yes, there is hope.
There is.
So we want to hear Anne's story and Anne's journey, where Anne has gone through a series of journey. You tell us whether it's peer pressure, is it friends, is it what made you get there? So give us your story and how you started your journey.
All right. Thank you once again. I was born in a Christian family. My mom, my grandmother were Christians, are still Christians. My mom is single, so I never got to know my dad. I was raised just like everyone else was raised, or in the village. I went to school, primary school, high school, and I was kind of sort of a quiet child. In my earlier years, I was mostly raised by my grandmother. I'm the firstborn in a family of three. But most of my childhood, I was raised by my grandmother because she was a primary school teacher. And circumstances dictated that I be with her for at least the lower classes. My mom, on the other hand, used to live in another place, a different place with my siblings. And as I was growing up, I didn't know that it was affecting me, but I felt as if I don't quite belong to my family. Now, growing up, I finished primary school, I went to high school. I was rather a quiet child. And after high school, I had plans. I wanted to pursue further education. And funny enough, I wanted to do journalism.
Wow.
Yeah, but unfortunately, I didn't make it to university at that time. I left home and went to find employment so that I can, I thought I would raise enough money to support myself in university or college. Now, one of the things that I felt that I needed, or I felt that I needed to have, that I felt I didn't have at that time, was being embraced, was being loved. I felt kind of, now that situation where I was raised by my grandmother, I felt as if my family, my nuclear family, was not loving enough. So in as much as I was searching for employment, in as much as I was searching for funds, I was still there's some emptiness inside of me that sought to be loved and embraced. And at 19, I remember that's when I first got into my first relationship. The guy was a close friend of my aunt who was 2 years older than me, and I was raised up with her. So the guy was kind of like afraid. He didn't want the relationship to be open. And once again, I felt rejected. So after that relationship did not kick off, I felt rejected, and I vowed now to leave my home place in search of greener pastures, both in searching for job and in searching for a meaningful relationship. Little did I know that I was searching for love in all the wrong places that I was not supposed to. So I got a job somewhere else. It was a hotel setting, and that is where I met with the father to my kids. He used to come and have his meals there, and in less than a month, we had hit it off, and he showed interest in me. And here, the inner person looking or searching for love felt for once accepted. We kind of rushed into the relationship, and we didn't take time to know each other. We didn't take time to date. We kind of rushed things, and that fact that I rushed into a new relationship, whereas I had not yet healed from the last one, the previous one. It was set to fail. And so it was while I was married to him, because after 3 months of knowing each other, of interaction, we moved in together. And soon after, I was pregnant with my first child. So it was like kind of a situation that I could not get out of immediately. So I stayed in the marriage. I delivered my first baby. 1 year later, I got pregnant again with my second child. In a space of 1 year, 10 months, the second girl came. And by this time, I was like, now this is life. I have to face it. I have to face it. So I stayed in that marriage despite it being abusive in so many ways. Physically, emotionally, it was draining. And in the 6 years that I was in that marriage, I remember I used to pack and leave almost every other year. So it was a hectic one, but I was afraid of going back home and starting again because the words failure kept on ringing in the back of my mind. But there was nothing that I could do that I could excel in. But after 6 years, it had become worse, and now the only option that was left was I leave, and that is what I did. I left, went back home. But then my firstborn was around 3.5 years of 4. Yeah, she was 4, and the second one was 2.5 years. They were both in nursery school, in the kindergarten, and it was a blow to me, going back home to a place where I was raised by my grandmother, going to that place. My siblings were still in school. My mom, the income that she used to use it to support my siblings in school. And here I am coming back with 2 more mouths to feed, 2 more people who needed support, who needed to eat, who needed to go to school. And I didn't have any form of employment. And that's now where I was at that time. And I was devastated. I kind of sank into a form of depression. And I felt I was a failure at that time. I had failed myself, the children, my family, and those voices kept on ringing at the back of my mind, and I couldn't find peace at that time. And I was a person who was not easy to open up to anyone, and based on the kind of family I had grown up in, I was not so close with my mom. I was not so close either with my grandmother because I thought there was a gap in between. So there was no one at that time I felt I could open up to and share how I'm feeling or where I am emotionally. So the only place where I could get this a sense of belonging was in the presence of other ladies, other women who had been through what I had been through and were raising their children alone. without their fathers. And that's how I got myself into this company of girls who, or ladies, rather call them women, who were single parents, but their lifestyle was a bit not straight. Most of them were used to take alcohol, used to have multiple partners. There's a particular one who used to sell in a bar, who used to be a bartender at that time, and that's the company that I found myself in. And the only way that I knew how to like find solace for my pain was through drinking, and that's where now my journey with alcohol, with addiction started. It didn't start like I was enjoying it. No, I drank to kind of try to forget all that was happening to me at that time, trying to forget the threats I was receiving at that time from the father of my children, because he had insisted that even though I've left, he insisted he wanted his kids back. But the circumstances through which we had parted short were not warranting that I leave my kids with him. And more so, they were girls, they were young. But on this other hand, I wasn't at a position where I can say that I would be able to take care of them, because I was jobless, and the little that we were getting from, the little support I was getting from my mom was the one that we used to go with. So I mostly drank to try and forget all that was happening to me, and trying to quiet those voices that kept on telling me that I failed, that I would not amount to anything in life. I failed in school, I failed with parenting, in marriage, and yeah, it was a tough place to be. And so slowly, I was introduced to hard booze. I started with wines and spirits, something that I don't think many people start that way, but that was my journey. I started with the hard stuff. And at first, I managed to hide it from my mom. At that point, my mom was working in a children's home, away from home. So she used to be home like 3 or 4 days in a month. So for the 3 days that she would be at home, I would try as much as I would to be normal and not drink. But then it got to a point where I couldn't hide it, because my body needed that to like kind of survive. But somewhere along the line, like let's say 6 months to 1 year down the line in that life, I felt the need to sober up and take up responsibility of my children, of my life. And by this time, my mom had really supported me so much, even in putting the girls back to school. And by that time, my firstborn was in class 1. The secondborn was in her second year in kindergarten. But still, I didn't feel good enough or responsible enough. That I thought that it was a high time that I needed to sober up and take responsibility of what I was doing in my life. And I searched for, and eventually a lady took me in to take care of her child. The baby was 7 months. And I used to go in the morning at 7 and leave in the evening at 8. So at least that kept me occupied in such a way that I would not drink. So for about 7 months, I saved quite a bit from that, what she was giving me. And I felt I needed to start up a small business that I could be able to be there for my children, and as well as I'm there physically, I'm there supporting them financially in the needs that they have. So I started up a small business in my hometown, and it quite picked up well. But then the habit that I had started earlier caught up with me. All this time that I was working in this woman's house for the 7 months, I only drank in the weekend, during the weekends. So I drank on Saturdays, and by Monday I would be sober. But now that I had started my own business, now I was my own manager. I could, I was free to do whatever I wanted. So I fell back to the same trap. And now the friends that were around me at that time, of course, there were people who drank. So most of the time they would come in with some takeaway and we would Ushirikatv there at my workplace where I used to work. And one of the days, it so happened that one of them came with a drink, and I think I had started drinking early. By this time, I couldn't function without taking the first a glass first thing in the morning. So they knew. So this guy comes, and we drank, and then I kind of lost it, and I ended up closing the shop before time. It was around, I remember the day, it was around 10 or 11 in the morning that I closed and went back home. By the time that I was coming back in the evening at around 4, I found that the store had been broken into and everything was gone. And some of the goods I had taken by credit. So at that time I was totally blank and I didn't know how to react or what to do. But the only thing that came to mind was go drink so that I could, quote unquote, function. And that's what I did. And now that was an incident that caused me now to get deeper and deeper and deeper into alcohol. And it was around the same time that I also started taking marijuana and tobacco. And from there, I was totally hopeless in matters regaining control of my life. It was a dark time for me, like being a mother, going home and my children are waiting for me, and here I come drunk. I can't even be of help to them with their homework and stuff. Even the other children at school knew that I was drinking. The parents always talked bad about me. It was devastating. It was a space I wouldn't want to go back to. No, never, or wish anyone to be. But then, deep inside, I knew I really needed to change my lifestyle. But I didn't know how, because the only thing I knew to do was to drink my woes away, drink my troubles away, drink my problems away. And it got to a point where now my mom now noticed that I'm not okay. And she tried to intervene, she tried to get me help. But at this time, I thought I was too far gone for any kind of redemption. But deep down in my heart was crying, how would I be able to get out of this hole that I found myself in? And no matter what they tried at that time, it wasn't bearing fruits. And now looking back, based on the background that I was raised in my formative years where I used to go to church every Saturday and participate in church activities, I think that background really helped me a lot, because at that time, during my darkest moments, I remembered that there was a place I used to go, that there's God who used to listen to me in that time. And one of those days I found myself, I remember I was totally drunk and high on other substances. And I found myself in where my pastor's wife, when I used to go to church, that is, used to own a shop, a tailoring shop in a shopping center. And so this day I found myself inside that shop, seeking help. And I remember her asking me, "What's the matter? Would you want to rededicate your life to Christ?" And I said yes. And she prayed for me. And for the first time since I started drinking, I slept without taking alcohol, but it was short-lived because I was in the same environment, the same friends, the same problems. So after like a day, I went back. But this time now, my mom was like, "Now, what do you do to help you?" And she was all over looking for rehabs and ways to help. And it was so difficult because even with us looking for rehabs, they are costly. And yeah, they are very, very expensive. And
very expensive.
Based on the background that we had, we couldn't afford a rehab at that time.
Hold it right there. Wow. And you've got a story. And I think we are all learning that sometimes it doesn't have to be peer pressure. It can be circumstances, e.g. marriage, home issues, parents separating. All these things can lead to addiction. We will be back as we take a short break. We shall be back and she will continue telling us. She's begun a journey of how she came out. So she'll be telling us how she managed to get to a rehab and she got sorted out when we come back. Welcome back. We are back to continue with the story of Anne. And from where we left, the parent was looking for a rehab. So we started a journey and a process of how she came out. So she'll be telling us whether the mother found the rehab and she got help. So yes, Anne.
Thank you. So at this time now, my mom was busy looking for a place where I could get help for rehabs. And as you know, rehabilitation is expensive. And depending on our family background, we were not a place where we could afford one. So the first place she found was at Mathare, because now, remember I had, in addition to alcohol, I was doing marijuana, I was doing tobacco. They call it chavis, that one that you put under the lip and it gives the same high as that of a cigarette. So the things that I was doing, the behavioral changes that they could see in me, it was at a point where I didn't care anymore what happened to me. So she thought, together with the rest of my family members, that Mathare would be a good place to start. So I didn't know where they were taking me at that time. And it was my first time actually to be at Mathare Hospital. And the reputation that I had, or the image that I had of Mathare, was that it was for crazy people. Yeah, so it was a shock learning that this is the place where my family was bringing me. And for the first time, it dawned on me how deep I was into drugs. The other part about Mathare that I didn't know was that they had a rehabilitation center as well within their premises. And so I had to undergo some tests, some assessment before they could take me in. And after the results came out, the staff there decided that one, I wouldn't need detox by then, but then they needed to give me some medication that would help me to come out. Some form of detox, yes, but not within
the intense, yes.
Not the intense one within the facility. So I was given some medication, and I was given a warning not to take them with alcohol. If I knew or if I planned to go on drinking, I was not to take the medication. But now by that time, my the state I was in was depressed, and the only thing that I looked forward to was sleeping and forgetting all that was happening. And a quick flashback as I was growing up, I used to like detest or to loathe those places where they used to sell alcohol and stuff. But now here I was, being at the center of where it is being sold, being at the center of where it is being used even during the day. And that, it was scary. It was a scary place for me to be. And so to run out of the reality that was happening in my life, I needed to sleep, constantly be sleeping. And the only thing that I knew by then was alcohol. But now here I was being given some medication, supposedly to clean me up and help me to cope with the withdrawal symptoms. But then I abused the medication as well. And by that time, in pharmacies, they didn't have the restriction to sell some medication over the counter. So I used to easily get them. So what would happen if I would drink and not black out? I would top up with this medication from my dad, which was fatal. And I really thank God that He saved me at that time, that I didn't die from overdose, I didn't die from mixing the medication with alcohol. It was a miracle how I survived. A few months of using the medication and my family believing that I was getting better, something happened. My mom came from work as usual for her break for the 3 days that she used to come. And by that time, I could not even hide it, that I was drinking. So I would go out in the morning pretending that I was going to work. But then I would start drinking as early as 6:30 in the morning. By the time that the kids were leaving out for school at 6:30 found me in the shopping center, trying to get something, international kutoa lock, because I had developed tremors. I couldn't do anything or function without kutoa lock. So my mom noticed that it was getting worse, and she, at work, she had a friend who was a lady from abroad who was volunteering in the children's home, and she noticed that my mom was not okay. So my mom shared with her my struggle, and her in turn, she shared with one of the board members, owners of that children's home. It is a children's home that is owned by a group of people from the States. So upon speaking to one of the board members, she recommended Teen Challenge. And apparently it happened that at the time that I was struggling with addiction, the founder of Teen Challenge Kenya, John Martin, his son, was the director where mom used to work. So it was kind of God, I think, in His own ways, had planned it that way. So, and that's how now I found myself in Teen Challenge. But at first, when we went to inquire, we were told that Teen Challenge is a 1-year program. And I was like, 1 year? Would I make it? What would I do in 1 year? What would happen to my children? The same children that I had neglected. But by that time, I was like, no, I cannot do 1 year. So I lied that, or I'd rather requested them to give me some time so that I can prepare my children, that I won't be around for this while. But at the back of my mind, I was like, I can do 1 year. And at this time, it was in the morning, I was really craving for a drink. So they believed me. They gave me the 1 week. I was to come back at a certain date. I didn't. I ran away from home. And my mom was devastated. She was at a point now where, how do I help this guy? But as fate would have it, as God would have it rather, on 18th of July, 2016, I had started my day as usual, drinking at 6:30. And by midday, I was out. I don't know up to date how I managed to get home, but I got home anyway, staggering the midday light. Everyone seeing me, Jua. I managed to get home. But immediately I got inside the house, the compound that we used to live in. My grandmother stays there. So she saw me coming, but I didn't see her. So immediately I got into the house. I think I fell several times. I fell over utensils. By the time I was leaving in the morning, the house was a mess. So I fell over utensils, and she knew that I had been taken to Madare. So she was like, oh, this girl is getting crazy. She needs to be admitted. So she called my mom and informed her how bad I was. And by the time that my family was coming, my mom was coming, I had totally blacked out. So I didn't know what was happening, and it was 3 hours later. So it took a lot of them convincing me that I really needed help. I really needed medical attention, and that's how I landed in Teen Challenge. The journey began on 18th of July, 2016. At first, I was very bitter with myself, with my family, with everyone that I felt had contributed to me being in the state that I was. But after a few days, a few weeks into the program, what happens is that you get time to really think about your life. And it is a drug-free zone. Of course, there are the withdrawals.
Yeah,
you have to do
those are real.
yes,
They are real.
And then being a quiet person, I felt everyone was against me. So I didn't make friends easily. And at the time that I took time to reflect on my life, I would get out of this place. But there was a voice deep inside me that was really telling me to surrender to God, It's an opportunity to rededicate your life to Christ. And hard as it was, I remember on 3rd of August the same year, it was way past 10 at night. I was supposed to be sleeping at that time, but I felt I didn't have peace within me and was really angry at God. My background, my upbringing, I was raised up in church, so I knew several verses. And at that point, the verse that kept on coming to my mind was Jeremiah 29, verse 11, that I know the plans that I have for you. But I was so mad at God that I couldn't speak to him directly. So I took a pen and a foolscap, and I was kind of writing this letter to him. And I was like, really, God, you say that you have great plans for me. Is being in Teen Challenge, being in this place, one of your brilliant plans? Was it in your plans that I would be here? Was it in your plans that I would go through all that I was going through? Why did you allow it to happen? What did I ever do? So those and many questions kept on lingering. And I remember one of the staff found me writing that letter and really crying out of the hurt that I had gone through, out of the feelings of abandonment that I felt at that time, but also there was a desire within me to be embraced, to be loved. And when this staff found me, she asked me now what I was doing alone in the sitting room, whereas everyone else had gone to sleep. And then she managed to find or to get what I was writing. And she asked me, would you like to give your life to Christ? And I remember I said yes, and I cried out of all the frustrations that I had been through. And one of the things that happened that night I felt at peace. I felt so much at peace. And I didn't feel any more rejected. I felt such a calmness that I really can't explain at the time, but I remember vividly that day. And from there on, that's now when my transformation journey started. It wasn't easy being at one place for 1 year and having to be told what to do.
I know that.
Like in the morning, you have to be at the lodge at 6:30 doing your devotions. You have to do this and this and this. And the hardest part was being away from my children. But it also was a time of reflecting, a time of dedicating myself to and devoting myself to seeking God. And after the year was over, I was a new person. I was transformed, and I really found this joy, this calmness, this peace that the Bible always tells us about, the peace that surpasses all understanding. And in addition to now me rededicating my life to God, the other thing that happened was that God restored my health. If you see my before picture, the picture that was taken on 18th of July.
That photo, I need it. I think we need to see it. Yes.
And the person that I am today, it has really taken a miracle. And I can really testify and say that there's God who transforms, there's God who gives chances upon chances to people who really seek Him. There's a God who turns lives around. Yeah, He has restored so much in my life, my health, the relationships that were broken between me and my family, me and my children. And currently, I'm back at Teen Challenge, a place where I didn't want to be in the first place, and God opened a door for me to serve there. This is my 3rd year. I came back in 2018. So yeah, I think this is my 3rd or 4th year serving at Teen Challenge.
Wow.
I'm grateful for life. I'm grateful for another chance. I'm grateful for transformation. I'm grateful for what God is doing, still doing in my life and in the lives of those girls that we are serving there.
Wow. Wow. Your journey has been interesting. And I thank God for Teens Challenge. And I must say this, that I was a partaker of John Martin. Even when he was establishing the ladies, I remember we were behind the suggestion because we could go visit, but we see the men, but we never got to see the ladies. So I wondered, why are we not having ladies who are being sorted in? Yet in our society, there are so many addictions of ladies out there doing and terrible things. So I thank God that He also heard our cry and He took action. So I'm so happy. I'm so happy for you, Anne, through your journey to where you've been transformed. And I'm sure you're transforming many lives because your story is amazing. And even as I always say, with an addicted person, the only thing they look for is love. That is what they look for. They just need to be told, to be affirmed, that they can make it, that they are loved, that they're important. But most of the time in our society, we push them away. Whether they are our children, our neighbors' children, we push them away. But if we only got to take time and listen to this person's story, then you would understand where they're coming from. And most of us in the society, we've judged them. That's why she said she went home drunk during the day and everybody saw her. Yeah, because we are a judgmental society. But we need to love these people. And I hope that we've learned. And before even we end up the show, what would be your parting shot? Your encouraging word to our viewer?
I'll say there's no one who's too far gone for redemption. That one I am sure, because I've experienced it firsthand. And I also see daily lives being transformed. And just like you have said, for any parent or any family that has a family member who is into addiction, the only thing that they are looking for is that love. Let us love them. God is love. He loved us. If we can begin to take account of the things that we have done that are not bringing glory to God, and God has and is still forgiving us day in, day out, let us love them just like God has loved us. And there is hope. There is hope. There is hope. As long as there is life, there is hope. There's a chance that that person can be transformed.
Wow, wow. There is hope. There is hope as long as there is life. So we will not give up. And this month, that is what we are saying. We are not giving up on our brothers. We're not giving up on our sisters. We're not giving up on our children. We're not giving up on our neighbors. We can pray for them. We can talk to them. We can be there to walk that journey with them. As we come to the end of this show, I want to thank you for staying tuned and watching us. I hope you've been blessed. You've been encouraged to know that all is not lost. There's still redemption. There is hope. And so, with those few remarks, thank you for watching She with Sue, where every woman's story is valid. I was your host, Sue.